I agree with Rob. We need to take that up, but I think as presented, this is an important step forward. I had a question about dates because I didn't understand. There was a June 1st date, but that apparently is not the date that this would take effect. My question is, what date would this take effect? How far out, assuming it's approved?
Monday?
And I would also suggest we make it July 1st because we don't have a commission meeting where we would approve those payment policy changes until mid-June unless we put it on the May agenda. So it makes sense to make it effective July 1st to make sure that we don't have it lapse. Oh, Mr. Amador.
So, excuse me, Chair Nash, this become effective. I mean, the changes and everything, we start doing this. Monday, we'll have the forms ready Monday. A lot of this is already being done now because we're not turning things away and folks have just been doing it. But we would make it formal in our policy July 1. So I'm sorry for the confusion there. So we would formalize it in the policy July 1. It's happening now. We'll have the forms updated, being worked on right now so that it will reflect correctly, and those will be ready by Monday. So hopefully that's clear enough for everybody.
So in your materials, you say through June 1 for all
Right.
outstanding newly, but you really mean you agree it should be through July 1.
If that's what the chair and the commission would like, we can change it to July 1. Yes.
Okay, I think that makes sense, just to make
Okay.
sure that we don't have it lapse.
Sure.
Judge Sealander, you had a question, comment?
It did, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments that anyone has? All right, just to recap, the motion would be to make changes to the pre-authorized expense submission process by amending the policy to increase the number of hours that are authorized for investigation to 150 hours on the short form, to 150 hours for PCRA, PCR, and J-law cases. And I'm assuming you also mean murder, oh no, murder cases are, never mind, to 150, measure 11 to 120 hours, then A felony, B felony, C felony, D felony, domestic violence, PCS, U felony to 80 hours. That when the short form is submitted, it's effective immediately. Investigation work can begin immediately. Mileage that's automatically authorized on the short form would be increased to 250 miles. If there is a service provider that needs to stay overnight to finish a task due to an emergency, which we haven't defined, OPDC recommends that attorneys or service providers be authorized for one night's lodging and meals at the guideline rate without having to seek pre-authorization, and then authorization must be requested and approved retroactively. And that for initial psychosexual evaluation requests where a sex offense has been charged, those would move to a short form submission and providers could begin work immediately upon submission. With that, is there a motion consistent with, and that this would start immediately and be effective through July 1, 2024? Is there a motion to that effect? Commissioner Mannenberg moves. Is there a second? Oh,
I think you have to add that it becomes formalized in policy on July 1st.
yes, that's what I meant by July 1st. Yes, okay. Thank you.
So I'll move that it be adopted.
Did you want to say something, Director Campy?
Oh, thank you. I heard that it becomes effective immediately and the forms will be available on Monday. They will not be available today.
Thank you. All right, is there a second to the motion? Commissioner Parrish-Taylor seconds. And Mr. Dietrich, could you call roll call vote?
Certainly. Chair Nash, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Sealander?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Buckley,
Yes.
Commissioner Parrish Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
All right, vote passes. Thank you. And then there's a second action item accompanying this, where there was, looks like, we approved some, well, not apparently, we did approve rate changes, but there was a mistake about what case types were included, and the agency's asking to correct that. And Mr. Amador, if you want to further explain, please do.
That one. Ralph, if you want, this is, the commission has approved, aside from the temporary hourly increase program rates, our standard rates for lawyers, there are 2 tiers. $145 an hour for the more serious case types and $130 per hour for the less serious case types. It came to our attention that there are different types of proceedings that we fund that don't fit into those buckets, including habeas corpus actions, mandamus proceedings, post-conviction relief cases, and then we do, even though we have an appellate division, we still fund attorneys in the field to do appeals on an hourly rate basis as well. And so the recommendation is to move those case types into tier 2, the $145 per hour rate. This is what we've already been authorizing them. It just hasn't been memorialized in the policy, and that's why it's before the commission today.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this request? All right. Do I have, the motion is that the commission approve the case type adjustments to the standard hourly attorney rates as outlined in the agency recommendation dated April 10th, 2024, that is contained in the commission materials. Is there a motion to that effect?
Make the motion.
Commissioner Buckley makes the motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Mannenberg seconds. Mr. Dietrich, could you make a roll call vote?
Sure. Chair Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Sealander,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckley. I think you were muted, Commissioner.
Yes.
Commissioner Parrish Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Leininger,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. And before we move on to the next agenda item, is the commission interested in making a, it's not an action item because we can't do that, but a recommendation or asking or a direction to the agency to attempt to do its best as quickly as possible to get payments down to below 30 days. All right, everyone is saying yes. So by consensus, we are asking the agency to do that and to report back in the May meeting and in each director's report actually about what the status is of that in subsequent commission meetings. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next action item, which should be quick, thankfully. I am very pleased to inform the commission that Commissioner Mandenberg has agreed to be the vice chair. I asked for volunteers and Commissioner Harris volunteered and Commissioner Mandenberg volunteered, and I talked with both of them. And Commissioner Harris agrees that Commissioner Mandenberg would be a wonderful choice for vice chair, and I agree. She and I have already met and kind of my word spitballed a rough list of all of the things I do, which I'm sure is not as the chair, so that we can try to delegate and separate out those and make them more formal, who's doing what. And so I am asking that we elect, I'm making the motion, that we elect Commissioner Mandenberg as the vice chair. And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Perfect. I suppose we need a roll call because we're on video. So with that,
Chair Nash, how do you vote?
yes.
Commissioner Sealander,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckley,
Yes.
Commissioner Parrish Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Leiniger,
Yes.
and Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Perfect. Yay. Motion passes. All right, so the next item is for the action item is adoption of the bylaws. We could take a break, but I before that, no, Commissioner, everybody say no. That's fine. I'm happy to move forward. I know I'm going to lose, we are going to lose Peter and others maybe very quickly. So let's move on to this action item. Turn it over to Commissioner Mandelberg, and I just want to say thank you. This is wonderful, and I especially absolutely love the beginning section of this where you have your the charts with all of the articles and anyway, it's wonderful. So with that, I'll let you take over for the presentation. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do these charts for myself because as we've discussed, I think visually and it helps me block things out. So I'm glad that some other people find them helpful. Hopefully everybody looked at the red line version and looked at the memo that explains some of the most important changes that were made since our commission meeting in March. And I don't think we need to go through it section by section, but I just wanted to point out that it's the result of a number of subcommittee meetings as well as our commission meeting in March. And I think that one way to think about these bylaws is that they are dealing with three main dynamics. And the first is the relationship between the commission and the agency. And that takes place in Article 3, Article 2, subsection 9, subsection B, and several provisions that set guidelines for communications between staff and non-voting commissioners who have contracts with OPDC. So trying to clarify the direction of decision-making and reporting and communication between the commission and the agency. The second big category is relationships between the commission and the agency on the one hand, and the public on the other hand. So those occur in Article 3, sub 1E, with individual communications of commissioners with public and the press, or with the legislature in 3.1D, clarity about the different kinds of meetings so that we all know what's going on at the different meetings and what the schedules are for public participation notice and materials. And then a clarified grievance procedure in Article 6. And the third big bucket is internal commission organization. And we take care of that in Article 2, Article 3, sub 1, Article 5 that deals with subcommittees, and also Article 5, sub 2 that deals with the audit committee. And as the memo points out, there's a clarification in here about exactly what the audit committee is meant to do, who it works with, and who reports to the commission, which is not the audit committee, it's the OPDC auditors who then report to the commission. So I think that the current state of the bylaws clarifies a lot of what was hazy with the former commission and what was hazy in terms of the commission relationship to the public. And that was the goal of drafting these bylaws. So I'm happy to answer any questions or clarifications that people want. Other than that, I think it's all in the written materials.
Are there any questions or comments or clarifications?
I think Brooke's hand is up.
Yes, Brooke, thank you.
Sure. So two things. First, I just noticed, and I was rereading again the bylaws. I think that having 3 minutes for public comment for people who are used to addressing the commission is really appropriate, particularly because those folks know how to put comments in writing. I never had an issue with a 3-minute limit when I was, testifying before I was on the commission. But I do think that 3 minutes gives a bit of a disservice to people who are not used to talking to a public body. In particular, I've noticed that some people who've never talked before get super nervous, they use up their time, and it seems like they're really frustrated. So I don't think this needs to be in the bylaw, but I would suggest that maybe the chair consider giving additional time to people who've never testified before the commission, because I think it'd be pretty helpful. And it doesn't seem like that's usually what takes up the most time at meetings. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The other thing is, I continue to think it would be useful if non-voting members could make motions. I understand that that's not currently on the table. I think it would be helpful for the dialogue. I certainly feel like I'm talking a lot as it is, so I don't, not trying to dominate things any more than I am as a non-voting member. But I think it'd be helpful if the 4 non-voting members could still make motions. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Two things, 2 comments about your comments. One, your point about public comment is well taken. And when I learned yesterday that we had a judge who was going to present information during public comment, I had no intention of cutting him off. I was hoping he wasn't going to take 20 minutes, but on the other hand, it was like, he's just going to, if it blows through the time, it blows through the time. So that's why also I suggested that he come back and invite him back so we can have further dialogue. But yes, your point is very well taken. And I think that that's just a game time call. And then I think, and Mr. Dietrich can talk about this, but I think there was DOJ advice that was sought about the voting versus non-voting members and whether or not they could make motions. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we looked at it here, we talked with DOJ, they looked at it, and I think for either Brooke or Jasmine as non-voting members, it's perfectly appropriate for you to basically say, if I were to make a motion, here's what it'd be. It's just that the vote is the culmination of the motion that's made. And so as a foundational piece, the motion needs to be made by a voting member. But your contribution and Jasmine's contributions are to exactly what you're doing, talk about what you'd like to see happen. And I don't think the prohibition on you making a motion is intended to prevent you from doing that.
And also Senator Prozansky and Representative Evans, who are also non-voting members. But yes, I think that works too. I mean, you could state what you thought the motion should be if you wanted to make a motion, and then someone could just make that motion.
Tom.
Hi, by the way, I didn't raise my hand to make this point, but if Brooke or any other non-voting member would like to just send me a chat, I would instantly make whatever motion you have in mind. I have great faith in our non-voting members and understand why that constraint is frustrating. The reason I raised my hand some time ago is I just wanted to recognize that Rob and Susan are such superstars. In my brief time on this commission, I've been so impressed by all the work they do, both in our commission meetings and in their separate subcommittee meetings. And I wish we had more positions to honor both of them as wonderful colleagues. And I think they both would have been great vice chairs. And then Susan, thank you so much for clarification of what oversight means. I thought the way you wrote that up really addressed the question I raised last March. And just generally, these bylaws look great. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Judge Solander, sorry.
Yeah, Susan, I had a question about communications not subject to public meeting laws.
Right.
You have crossed out ex parte contacts. And my question is, number one, in terms of commissioners, what is ex parte contact? And number two, by crossing that out, does that mean all ex parte contacts are subject to public meeting laws?
I crossed out the term ex parte contact because I thought that term was not very clear, especially for people who aren't lawyers or used to bureaucratic types of communications or didn't study Latin in high school. I thought that explaining what kinds of communications we were talking about was more clear than just referring to ex parte contacts. So I was hoping that under subsection A and B, when we were discussing or when we were laying out the specific types of communications, that would let people know more clearly what they could and couldn't do without being subject to public meeting laws.
But I guess my specific question is, by crossing it out, by having it in and crossing it out causes me some problems. And you make reference to commission members having communication with OPDC staff. If I have contact with a member of the public or a contractor on commission business or matters before the commission, that's ex parte contact, but I don't think that is covered by public meeting law rules. Am I
think
correct?
that's automatically not covered by public meeting. Certainly, individual communications with a member of the public. If I sat down with a provider, for example, I think that that's automatically not covered by public meeting laws the way that public meeting laws set out their definitions. Similarly, as I understand those definitions in the law, they're not, my communication with a member of the staff is not covered by public meeting laws. So I didn't see any need to reiterate that in the bylaws. But obviously, if commissioners want that reiterated in the bylaws, we can certainly do that.
Susan, I wouldn't have asked the question, except you took out ex parte contacts. That's what caused me. I agree with you. I don't think it isn't subject to the public meeting laws, but I have been bound by ex parte contacts for years, and it concerned me.
Yeah, it was just a question of trying to clarify the heading.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you again. These are wonderful. And thank you for the governance committee, and particularly Susan, your work on this. Very, very much appreciated. All right. So with that, is there a motion to adopt the bylaws dated today, I believe?
So
Well,
moved.
the memo, thank you. The memo date is April 10th, but of course today is the 17th. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
All right, Mr. Cheatrick.
Chair Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Sealander,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Buckley,
Yes.
Commissioner Parrish Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Lander, and Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. And I will say, now that we have bylaws, we've identified, and we've previously identified and now formally identified a new subcommittee, legislative subcommittee. So please get Addie your, yes, I'm willing to be on this committee as soon as possible, please. And then once we've identified who's going to be on the committee, I will sign a
Do
letter.
you want to just briefly go over the scope of that committee with everyone so that they know it's more than just the reports, which are riveting and very worthwhile?
So I think what we talked about before was reports, but also identification and vetting and discussion of substantive and procedural type law changes that we might want to pursue with the legislative changes, I guess is a good way to put it. And I could also, I mean, the committee can develop its own scope, but I would certainly think that, you know, there's lots of reports that are not just the reports we've looked at now, but lots of communication that needs to go to the legislature. And it seems like that is a natural resting place for that work to be done ahead of any formal approval. And then if the committee and the agency has other suggestions about things that seem like a good fit for the committee, then we can have a more, I don't know, formalized outline of what that work would be once it's developed. Yes, Tom. You're muted.
Is this a solicitation of volunteers, or is Abby going to pick volunteers or pick subcommittee members? So I just had two questions. I've been trying to budget time so I could be on one subcommittee because working full time, I can only do one. And I was wondering what other opportunities are coming down the pike. I mean, there was the Sixth Amendment subcommittee. I forget the title. Are there other subcommittees that people will be recruiting for, or is now a good time to just jump in?
Well, I think the I don't know. Because the governance committee took on the bylaws and it should morph into taking on other work. I didn't see that committee as a temporary committee. And I think the question is, what do they now do? Do they take on do they continue with just governance and oversight? Do we also have a second or third, I'm sorry, at this point, subcommittee that deals with workload development and things like that? So I think that's worth a discussion, a longer discussion to have, and maybe the agency could identify, and we can take that up in the main meeting if we think that there are other or the governance subcommittee could discuss if there are other subcommittees that we think need to be formed. But that's a good question.
Yes, I'd like to volunteer to be on this subcommittee with Abby. I'm kind of time constrained until the end of May, but would like to be on this subcommittee with Abby.
Fantastic.
Or Addie, forgive me for saying Abby.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm happy to say we got through all the action items intact with all of our commission members. So that's fantastic. So the next item on the agenda, which is a briefing regarding the discussion of the draft comprehensive public defense report, which we're being briefed on now, will take up in May to formally approve. Sorry, Ms. Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'm back with another riveting report. Thank you, Addie. We have our comprehensive public defense report, which was directed under Senate Bill 337. And this is a report, unlike the other ones you've approved today, this report goes to the judiciary committees of the legislature. So that's why it's not on the same timeline as these other reports. It's in 337 is due May 15th. So that provides us with additional time. Would you like me to share the screen and go through this report, or would you like me to just kind of talk about the general idea of the report and what would be most helpful from the commission?
Sorry, I'm doing two things at once. I also got a request or a question from Director Camphy about the time, because it's now 1 and we were noticed to go past, or noticed to go to 1 if we're going to go past 1. So I was looking at the agenda. I do think that we should go past 1 because the other things that we have on the agenda are shorter, but they're important that we talk about. And so I think we should plan for maybe another 30 to, well, maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And we'll try to move through those as quickly as possible, but we should talk about the other things that are on the agenda as well. So there's that. And then to your question, are there people, do we want to have the report shared as we did at the beginning, or do we just want to have, do you have questions or comments or concerns that you would rather just after Ms. Taylor's summary take up. So nod your head if you want a full report on the screen.
Are we going to
Everybody's-
be reviewing anything that requires a vote? Because a number of us have to leave
No.
at one. Okay.
We are not. All right, so the consensus is no, we don't need to see the report on the screen. So if you want to just give a summary, Ms. Taylor.
Yeah. So this report is again an iterative report. I believe we'll be turning in it in once a year for the foreseeable future. I think it goes into 2030, 2036. So this report is just about how we will be providing public defense services in Oregon in the future. So it is a very broad report, and it is one of those very long-term planning reports. If you go through the report, what you'll see is we do our fiscal projections based on workload, which is directed by the budget note. And this is kind of a culmination of, we have our caseload forecast, which was just recently produced by OEA, the Oregon Economic, anyway, part of DAS. And then we have our hours per case, which come from the Oregon study or the national hours. Again, that'll be something that you guys will need to adopt or discuss in the future. Then we'll have the hourly rate, which again, we'll be having an economic study, which will come before this commission in the future. And then basically our financial projections based on workload would be a combination of those three factors with potentially other mitigating circumstances worked in once we have those discussions. Then we go into the public defense delivery, which is actually how public defense will be provided. We discuss workload versus caseload and the differences there. And then we talk about our transition to the future state, which again, based on 337, is the state employees, the nonprofit public defenders, and the panel attorneys. Then we talk about standards and oversights and what those qualification and performance standards are going to look like currently. And then finally, some training and supervision. Then we go into the 6-year plan. That section is actually blank right now because we haven't taken it up. Since that was removed from this commission meeting, I think that section of the report will actually be completely removed since we won't have approved that in time for the May 15th deadline. And then, of course, the appendix, which had the 6-year report, will be removed, but we will be referencing the Oregon study from the ABA. What would be the most helpful from this commission, especially given our short timeline here, would be feedback in the form of an email, if that would be acceptable. I really am looking for feedback from this commission about this report. We want to make sure it's going in the correct direction. This might also be something that the legislative committee takes up. So we can have a fuller discussion in that committee before it's brought forward to the full committee in May.
I think that makes a lot of sense to have the legislative committee looking at that. Of course, the difficulty with this report is that it includes a lot of policy issues that the commission really has not decided on yet. But I think it's also okay to say that in the report. Like, here are the things that we have to talk about and that we have to decide. And, you know, the commission's going to be taking these issues up and just kind of lay out what the decision points are and what needs to, you know, what the vision is and what needs to happen. And that's kind of the timeline for those things needing to happen. Because, I mean, you know, we can't tell them what a workload model is because we haven't adopted a workload model. We haven't, you know, there are things that we just can't put in here, but telling them that, like, these are things that the commission will be taking up and here's why, and here's the potential impact, and, you know, here, blah, blah, blah. So I think but this is a nice framework to start. And I really appreciate that, especially, you know, developing it out of whole cloth is difficult. But yes, I think the legislative committee can take up getting this ready for the next meeting. Are there other comments, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I think this is too long with too much information and mixed policy and process to really intelligently comment in this meeting here today. I see a lot of issues that I would like to have understood and addressed. I know it's sort of an overlap on your 6-year plan too, from what I could tell. Just going through it. So are you saying, Lisa, that you just like to have an or the agency would just like to have an email with concerns or questions from commissioners? Is that what I understood?
Yes, I think that would be helpful. I'm also happy to hear comments now. I was just looking at the time wise.
I think an email might be really helpful, and CC that, or make sure that Addie has that, and it can be taken up in the legislative committee, and then, you know, she can provide that feedback at the May meeting and how it was distilled into the final product that we're looking at. Does that sound like a good process, Rob?
Yeah, that's fine. I want to understand a little bit how this report coincides or overlaps or is separate from the 6-year report, or is it the same? Or is this 6-year plan an amendment to this, or can you explain how these two work together?
Yeah.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the initial plan for this was to include the 6-year report, kind of summarizing that at the end of this report. They are two separate reports, and I might think of them, and Chair Nash, please correct me if you're thinking of this differently. It's almost like our comprehensive plan would be a plan about how we could implement the parts of the 6-year plan that we're planning to implement, but also this report goes much deeper than the 6-year plan. It's not just about numbers and how we get and pay for lawyers. It's also about the qualifications of those lawyers, how we're going to set up the panel of attorneys that 337 directs. So it goes a lot more into the planning for the implementation of Senate Bill 337.
I think that's right. I mean, I think we commissioned the 6-year plan to help us develop the comprehensive public defense plan. And this comprehensive public defense plan is a report that goes to the legislature specifically, but, you know, we can obviously and should use it to, you know, answer our have it be our broader plan. Which is why it's kind of a difficult report, because a lot of the things that we would put in here, we haven't talked about or decided yet. So it becomes, you know, it's like, how can you have a plan before you have a plan? So I think, I mean, that's part of the, but I also think the legislature is used to that, and certainly with us, they're used to that. And we have the chair of the Judiciary Committee who's now left, but he's on our commission. So certainly he's going to understand that those issues are the Senate Judiciary Committee, so that those issues are issues that we need to address.
Can somebody take responsibility for letting the voting and non-voting commissioners who've left that you would welcome emails giving feedback about this? Because I don't want them to be left out just because they had to leave at 1 o'clock.
I can send a group email to everyone that that includes that.
Great.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions or concerns or anything on this topic?
I would just like to say, I know we're really short on time, but I appreciate getting the report 1 month in advance of when we're voting on it. I know that's what we're moving towards, so just big thumbs up on helping us get to there. And certainly email Lisa and CC me thoughts, comments, concerns. We'll try and take them up and address them in legislative sub, and then bring you back something that's going to require less motions with pluses signs, so to speak.
Thank you. I'm making myself a note so I can remember what I need to do. All right, moving on to Director's report.
My director's report will be very brief. When this commission meeting was added to our schedule, it was really with a focus of doing the work to get the reports out the door and everything that needed to come in front of the legislature in May. So the other parts of this meeting are really slimmed down. I just wanted to let commissioners know that we have an open house coming up on May 9th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. At our new Mid-Willamette Valley trial office. So you all are invited to come down and meet some of the lawyers that are doing that direct representation at the trial level and hear from Mr. Jeffers about how that office is doing.
Thank you. All right, how about an update on the unrepresented persons?
This will also be brief because we had not initially planned on having this update for this meeting. So I just have a couple of slides with the numbers. And Mona, is it possible for you to share that? So we can see that the unrepresented numbers are, while they're trending up slightly, they're pretty much holding steady. So the big spike that we saw in the spring and summer of 2023 came down once the new contracts were put into place that, as Commissioner Nash noted earlier, prorated the MAC every month instead of having it be just an annual total. So that has had an impact of keeping the numbers from skyrocketing again. But other than that, they're pretty much holding pretty steady. And Mona, the next slide. This is having to do with the out of custody unrepresented persons, and we can see that that is where the bulk of the unrepresented cases is with the out of custody folks, and that those numbers have also been holding pretty steady since that big spike. We have not made a lot of progress in bringing them back down from the spike that happened in late spring, early summer of 2023. But we have avoided a big increase in them since that time. And I think that might be it for our unrepresented update. We'll have a more thorough unrepresented update for you all in just 3 weeks' time when we come back. I think it's May 8th is our next commission meeting. It's early May, so it's a short time, and we'll be prepared for a much more detailed conversation at that time.
And just a note about the numbers. I mean, it's still too many, period, but the out of custody numbers include about 50% of those are on warrant status. So it is over 3,000, but half of those people are out on warrant. So it's still not good, but it's not 3,000 live active cases. Rob?
Yeah, I was going to have some questions around this today, but I'm going to defer that till May when we get a fuller report, and maybe talk a little bit to the folks there at the agency and you, Jennifer, as far as what I think I would like to hear. I think some of the good news, I was looking at this the last couple of weeks, and a lot of the in custodies, that's way too many in custodies, but many of them, they show up in custody one day and they're off the list in 3 days because they do find somebody. So even though it may say 100, many of those just didn't have a lawyer at the time of arraignment, and they'll pop up and then they come back. Still not good, but it's not like we have 100 people sitting in jail for 6 months waiting for lawyers. The unrepresented is more of a concern. They're going months and months sometimes without lawyers, and that certainly is a concern for all of us. So I wanted to say that, but like I say, I'll work with you on coming up with some ideas about some information I would like to hear. I do think this should be one of our first agenda items, not deferred to the end, because it's sort of like one of those things like we're button up for time and we're going to quickly move through this. And I tend to agree with some other speakers here today that, we can't ignore this problem. And I know we're not. but maybe we should be giving a little more priority to solving this problem because it appears like almost close to being solvable. I mean, if we're at the point where those numbers are holding steady on the out of custody, maybe a little extra effort, and Clackamas County was able to do it. And I think we should dig into some of these providers in some of the counties where they are handling it and others where they're unable to for whatever reason, and find out what resources we can get to those counties, or help them get these numbers down. But the only way we can do that is we know what's going on in each of these counties and each of these providers. That's the type of information I think we need to know. Then we can, if it's something we can solve by directing resources to those counties in one way or another, let's do it. Let's get these numbers down, because it looks like we're holding, like I say, we're holding steady, which means maybe we're handling the current caseload, but we're swapping out people who have been on the waiting list for 2 months, and the person who now just gets arraigned has to wait. Anyway, I think there's more information and work to be done on this, and I think it should be given some priority.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rob. Oh, excuse me. I was just saying, thank you, Rob. And I will reach out to you to set up a meeting so that we can talk about what would be most helpful in the unrepresented report.
Thank you.
I will say too, I think that one of the things that's kind of hidden that we're going to figure out pretty quickly, hopefully, I mean, very quickly, I'd say 60, 90 days, is we should see a bigger dent in the unrepresented as the statewide offices come more online, because one of the things that's been happening is there's been a massive issue with discovery, not being able to obtain discovery because of OJD firewall issues. So that issue has just been resolved this week. So it's really limited the number of cases that the state trial lawyers could take, because they literally were unable to get discovery on cases. So the numbers were artificially deflated. Well, I shouldn't say artificially, because they weren't artificially deflated. They were deflated about what number of cases could be taken because of technology issues. So once that happens, and we've largely solved the in custody unrepresented persons in those counties, those lawyers will probably start taking, I think the plan is, out of custody unrepresented cases, and we'll start to see an impact on those numbers. So fingers crossed. I mean, we'll have a lot more data, I think, in the next 60 or 90 days about those offices too. Okay, and the last item is the budget. Is Mr. Amador available? Maybe not.
Ralph?
Well, okay, so we may have to defer that. Our next meeting's in 3 weeks. So the budget numbers aren't going to change much between now and 3 weeks from now. Our next meeting is May 8th. So we'll just have a budget report in the next meeting.
And I do believe Mr. Amador just messaged me that he's with us. So I don't know if he's having a tech issue.
Okay. I don't.
Ralph, are you able to hear us?
Well,
maybe it will have to wait.
Yeah, we can wait. So May meeting preview, 6-year plan discussion, preliminary discussions about, oh, there's Mr. Amador, preliminary discussions about the policy option packages that the agency may want to request from the legislature. That's a discussion, not a decision. And then the comprehensive public defense plan report that we just discussed. Also, as a reminder to the commissioners who are here, if they haven't already responded, and maybe Susan, you can put this in your email to the commissioners. Please respond to Mona about whether or not you need lodging for the June in-person meeting as soon as humanly possible. Thank you. And please, whenever she sends you emails, please respond like right away. Thank you. Public service announcement. All right, Mr. Amador.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm doing the budget update. Mona, can you put that up? Thank you. Sorry for that. My connections are bad and I have a lot of construction outside my window right now. Chair Nash, members of the commission, Ralph Amador, Chief Financial Officer. Here is a budget update for the month ending February 2024. Currently, we're looking at a positive variance of $4 million overall for the agency. What this shows here is that it's not as comprehensive a view as before, but this is just an overview to show where we're at forecast wise, variance wise for each of the divisions that are in the commission. The differences I've added on at the far right is the 2024 session change. These are additions that were made to the budget, and it equated to about $35 million. However, that does not say that our variance now is $40 million, because with these changes will come projections that have not been entered into our stuff yet. So our next report, and the reason for this is because the bill that has a lot of these things has not been signed by the governor yet. So while they're there, they're not there. She has until I think tomorrow to finish up, or today to finish up, if she hasn't already done so. When I checked last time, it hadn't been signed yet. So quarterly adjustments need to be made for audit and juvenile PCRP caseloads. There were changes, additions, 40 amendments were done over the course of this last quarter that are going to change the adjustments in the adult trial division and the juvenile division and parent-child representation, because there was additions that were made for MAC and FTE. So this is a snapshot of where we are right now. I will say that we will be making our payments on time this month, and we have compiled that the incentive payments, or the 9.9, that portion for April will be going out as well, with the payments on the 25th. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Are there any questions? I like this format. It's very easy to read. It's much easier than the usual format, although the usual format is helpful too, but this is great. Thank you, Ms. Ramdar. All right, I don't see any questions. Thank you for your information. Very much appreciated. Okay, is there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? Sorry for running 20 minutes over, but all things considered, I think that was a miracle. So next time, hopefully I'll be on time. All right, I'll enter, we don't need a motion because we're just having an informational meeting and there aren't enough voting members to make a motion. Oh yeah, there are. There's 5 of us. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, in a second. Anybody object? No. All right. Oh, Tom, you're muted.
I was wondering if I could talk to you just for a second after the meeting. Would you mind holding on for just a second?
Actually, yes, because we're being recorded in a public meeting. So why don't you just call me?
Oh, okay. I was just going to mention that I can't attend the June meeting in person for the reasons I've explained before.
Oh, no, I remember that. And I understand. I think it's going to be a hybrid meeting. Not everyone is going to be there in person. So, and I know that you will not be there for some of the meetings. So you're excused. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you in May.